This build is going to combine 2 airsoft masks with 2 motorbike air filters to produce a steampunk styled Halloween mask. The base piece for the build is this skull airsoft mask bought from the internet. I'm going to remove the eyepieces and then paint this a copper colour. I've given the mask a light sanding so that the paint will key onto it better. I'm now going to spray over the top with a white plastic primer paint. Over the top of the white primer layer, I'm going to spray some coarse texture paint to roughen the surface. The colour of the coarse texture paint is not important because this is going to get covered with a layer of copper spray. For this, I'm using some Stone Effect Plasticoat paint. I'm going to focus the coarse texture paint on the low points, so around the eye sockets and around the edges of the mask. The next layer of paint is a copper metallic spray. The next coat is a dark brown enamel wash which will go over the whole mask. I get asked about this a lot. A wash is basically a very dilute paint, so when I put it over the copper you will still see the copper beneath, but the wash will preferentially stick in the lower parts of the mask, making them look darker. As you can see, the wash has preferentially gathered in the low points of the mask, making them much darker, making the high points stand out. I'm now going to use a technique called dry brushing by using a small amount of copper paint to pick out the high points. With the dry brushing, I've used a very small amount of copper paint and focused on the high points, which helps to pick them out. You can leave the mask as it is at this point, or you can add some copper oxidization. I've given the mask a weathered look using this green weathering powder. I've applied this to low points on the mask using a dry brush. I'm going to build the armoured airsoft mask over the top of the copper mask. This is simply held together by plastic rivets which come apart so it can break into sections. I'm not going to use the goggles and the brim of the hat in this build. I'm also going to paint this a brass colour. Before I paint it a brass colour, I need to drill 2 holes in the jaw section because I'm going to add these motorbike air filters to either side. I've drilled a hole in either side of the jaw piece, big enough so the rubber connector to the air filter will fit through. I'm going to keep these out whilst I paint the jaw section of the mask. The first coat of paint onto the upper parts of the mask is going to be a white plastic primer. I'm going to spray over the top of the primer with brass coloured paint. The next layer is a brown wash which I'm going to paint over all of the pieces. Once the wash has dried, I'm going to dry brush over the pieces with brass coloured paint. I've reattached all the pieces of the armoured helmet that I'm going to keep. I've kept the bottom part black because this is quite rubberized and therefore may not take the spray paint too well. And I've also pushed through the 2 connectors which are going to connect to the motorbike air filters. I've painted the ends of the air filters using the same brass technique as for the outer parts of the mask. You can then screw the air filters onto the mask. I'm just going to use a couple of bolts to hold the 2 masks together. Now, rather than having the head facing out, which would look neater, I've put that on the inside because it's smoother and therefore won't cause any irritation to the face when the mask is worn. This is what it looks like when the 2 masks are bolted together. This is the top off a baby's food sachet. I'm going to cut out the middle and spray this a brass colour. I've glued the plastic lid over the eyepiece. You might choose not to include this as this is going to obscure the vision slightly. So this is the completed mask.